So we normally wait a minute for people to get on. Okay, we're live, girl. Hold on.
Okay.
Let me get back to Zoom. Hi, Facebook friends. I'm here with Raven Dana. We're getting set up here, so we're going to wait for a second for everyone to start joining in. Hi, Raven.
Hi, Marianne.
Thanks for being with me tonight.
Oh, thanks for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, I'm so excited, actually. It's not often that we get to have conversations with other people doing this work, you know? It's a solitary thing. People don't understand that. That we're not just hanging out with other psychic folks, you know?
Yep.
Well, there we go. Well, that's all right, kids. Hang on a sec. Waiting for people, and I'm trying to figure this thing out. Hey, I can't believe I've learned all this stuff.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
to be honest with you, I mean, I've always been really mechanically inclined because my moon and my rising are both Cancer,
Uh-huh.
so it makes me very engineering minded.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm good at taking a lot of information and funneling it into solutions really quickly. And so that makes, and my dad was like MacGyver. So,
Yeah, my moon is in Cancer, but I'm not all that. Usually I touch electronic things, and if I'm not in the right state of mind, I fry them. So I have a little different issue going on.
that's hilarious.
Yeah.
Isn't that funny though? Oh, all right, kids. Let's see who we got online here. Hold on, Raven. Let's look. Wow, got a bunch of folks already. Well, thanks for joining us, everybody. So, um, hey, Mary, Kirsten, Nance, Lynette. Hey, Tony, Sue. All right. I can't see how many we have. We have quite a few, though. Oh, a friend of yours, Maha,
Mm-hmm.
is on.
I'm
Yeah, that's good. So, yeah, so that's fun. I'm so glad you could join me today, Raven, because this is desperately needed, I think, in our world right now, and it's nice to have these conversations with each other.
It is. It is. It's good to be aligned with other people who have the same insight and intuition as well.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to our conversation tonight because I think it's going, everybody's used to hearing me talking all the time about, blah blah about myself and the work um and again, like I said, it's a solitary thing, so it's not that we really align with other people in this work very often,
That's right.
and and again, I'm really, and I hate to say this, in this way, but I'm very selective about who I align with in my life, and
Me too.
and it's something that we teach.
Mm-hmm.
We share that, and so again, I have to really come to a place of respecting people that, and so you're one of those people that I really, respect and want to introduce to other people. So
Oh, thank
you're,
you. I appreciate
yeah,
that.
you're part of my village. So,
You too. And we have the
so
same birthday.
yeah, Raven and I share a birthday. We're both born on February 24th, which, um, yeah, that makes us unique, right?
Yep.
So do you do it much with astrology yourself?
Not very much myself. My godfather was an astrologer, though, so I pretty much learned the
Oh.
signs and all that when I was still probably, 5 or 6 or 7 years old. I knew a lot of those things just from listening to him.
Well, it's funny because I don't have a math. I'm not a math person. I'm a wordsmith,
Mhm.
and so the astrology and the math is just beyond me. But thank God for the programs and stuff. But I can do a natal chart. But if you want forecasting, you're gonna have to find a real astrologer.
Mhm.
But knowing that, you don't have to be an expert at a lot of these things as
That's
long
right.
as you have that. I think that basis of understanding.
Mhm.
Um, I think the natal chart in that sense is so important
Mhm.
because it actually gives you the roadmap to your strengths, your weaknesses, your karma. It's pretty neat, actually. So, you know, I came here very challenged. I was born during 5 retrogrades,
Aha. Mhm.
which explains oh so much.
Oh, so much. Yes.
Do you know how many retrogrades you were born under?
4.
4? Yeah. See, that in itself is really probably partially why we're doing this work, you
Yes.
know, because we came here with so much early karma to overcome that, uh, what doesn't kill you makes you wise and stronger, hopefully. So here we are.
We're crazy, one or the other.
Well, then there's that.
Depends
So,
on the day.
oh yeah, so I have to. The other thing I admire about Raven is that she's a badass. I mean, I have never really, I've been walking that way my whole life, and most people are going that way. Well, that's the beauty of the village is that we're aligning with people that are been those people their whole life is going that way, and now we're all kind of finding each other, which is
Yes.
amazing. And
Mhm.
yeah, so yeah, you're one of the few people that will do half the crazy shit that I will.
Yep.
You know, I mean, I'm the first one to jump in a fight. I'm the first, well, okay, there's discernment now, but I
Uh-huh.
really don't. I don't think of those risks sometimes in the midst of those situations.
Well, no, actually, I find that, to me, that's a strength that I don't get scared first. I get angry first, and I don't suppress my anger. I let it fuel my action. So I take very clear, decisive action in the moment, and I get scared later. So it has served me really well.
Well, and again, we came with that. We came with that ability because of things we've overcome in our own life,
Yeah.
and that is a really great skill. So what looks super risky to
Hmm.
other people is not. It's very calculated.
No, it's not at all. Yeah.
And people don't realize that there actually is a discernment while we're even in the midst of that.
Hmm.
That I can stop and really just go real quick
Hmm.
and decide what to do.
Hmm.
That's why fear is not an option, my friend, right?
No, it is not an option.
Yeah, let's talk about fear a little bit.
Hmm.
How limiting that is.
Well, it is. And I think that, people have a fear response, and we all have a fear response. There's a wonderful book called The Gift of Fear, and it's written by Gavin De Becker. And he's a risk assessment specialist that takes women who have had really horrific things happen back to the moment when their intuition told them there was something wrong and they didn't listen. And everything he does is based on helping people go back to that moment and listen, because fear, that frisson of something's not right, is a gift that's telling you to take action. And you've got to take action in that moment. And if you don't, you get frozen, you become a victim, all of those other things can happen. So I loved that book because I so can wrap my head around that when you feel something's wrong, you can't stop to analyze it, because that other part of your awareness is so much faster and so much more accurate. If you don't take action in that moment, you're sunk, right? You're still thinking about what you're going to do next, and you're on the ground. So it's that gift of fear. And I think we've become so careful, like, well, I can't interfere, or it's not my business, or what will happen, or what will people think of me, or it's, all of those things that just interfere with that desire to do the right thing in the moment. Because I think
Yes.
we have that. We have it, and we've been conditioned, trained, taught, diminished to the point where we sweep it aside and we become onlookers.
Absolutely. And again, that's that acronym of false evidence appearing real. There is this inherent fear that is so important in fight or flight. And then having that illusionary fear that's taught to us through, like you said, those conditionings of being a female, whatever experiences we've had have taught us to not trust that, that inner divine knowing. And that's what I've come to realize is that that is actually separate from us. It is a piece of us that is constantly watching out for us. And to not trust that inner knowing that's the stage crew that I always talk about. The
Yes.
guides, those spiritual beings that are actually here for our highest and best, who can see further than we can. Um and again, we've been taught to be conditioned away from that inherent intuition and knowing.
Well, and I think that, we forget that such importance has been placed on intellect and analysis in the past handful of generations, that really what we want to call our waking mind, our rational reasoning mind, is only the very, very tip of the very real iceberg that is the being that we are, or the consciousness that we are, that so much occurs below the surface. And we have become conditioned to ignore it and dismiss it. It's an enormous mistake, because intelligence is not intellect. Intelligence is the conversation that occurs between intellect and intuition. So if we're not listening to the larger part of us, we're in big trouble. And so, when we go home and we think we talk to ourselves, it's like, okay, well, you're talking to the idiot that got you in trouble in the first place.
Right.
Talk to somebody else, outsource.
Exactly. Oh my God, that's so true. And again, this is where, when we talk about we're spiritual beings here in a human experience, that isn't one or the other. It's both. We are that divinity as well as this human journey that we're on. And the challenge is that we forget that divinity, and then we're conditioned away from that divinity by other people, culture, conditioning, all those different
Culture's
conditioning.
conditioning, religious backgrounds, all that. And that's something that, for me, coming from having a very strong pagan background, those two things for me are not and have never been separate. They're just not separate. There's no, like, what I imagine myself to be is a solidified version of whatever the all-knowing everything is. There's no separation. It's not this and that. This is that.
So were you raised pagan?
Well, no, yes and no. Here's the thing. My family had a very eclectic, interesting set of beliefs. So my growing up was like a mashup of the Addams Family and the TV show 6 Feet Under, right? My father was a mortician. He was a restorative artist. So I grew up around bodies and death and funeral homes. And my grandmother had been an army nurse. She had plenty of stories. She also had her little rituals. She would burn palms to keep lightning from striking the house. And, she did all these little very witchy things. She knew everything there was to know about herbs and alternative remedies. And so I got a lot of that. And my grandfather was extraordinarily intuitive. And he would tell stories about when he was in the war and how he would know what was going to happen before it happened. And my grandmother had prophetic dreams. There was nobody in the family that hadn't, and she never went out of the house, by the way. My grandmother quit going out of the house when I was 4 years old, but she ran the roost, because she would dream things and call people up and say, hey, you're supposed to go to this wedding. Don't get in that car. Don't go. Or you're going to hear of so-and-so is going to have a baby. And they'd be like, what? And she was right on. Now, having said that, we were also sent to Catholic schools because we lived in a really rough neighborhood. So they did not want to send us to the public schools. And so I was always told from the time I was very small, you need to know what they're teaching you, but you don't have to believe any of it, right? It's just another class like all your other classes. You can take it or leave it. So I was that person that when I was very small and they would do the collect pennies for the pagan babies, I would be like, hey, that would be me. Don't I get to take those home? Well, no, that would be no. But yeah, I was the one in trouble for saying, what do you mean eating meat on Friday is going to send me to hell? What kind of God does that stuff? So I was that person.
So I came hit by that very inherently, which was very interesting. And And so my son Jared has had the life you describe,
Mhm.
that more, he didn't have the same conditioning. And I sent him to 12 years of Catholic school
Yep.
because it was something I understood and it was a basis of faith. And we had to do a lot of, shuffling and unraveling of some of these concepts because they do. They're like, what?
Oh yeah. Oh
I
yeah.
mean, I clearly remember having a fight with a priest about why Jews go to hell.
Right.
Okay. And I'm like 7 going, okay, wait a minute. This man devotes his whole life to God and he's going to hell. And
And
it
what's
was
wrong
like,
with this picture?
well, and if you guys ever get a chance, go online and there is actually Neil Donald Walsh is actually doing a talk about that, being raised Catholic.
Hmm.
And he was talking about how even as a child he knew that these concepts just did not make sense. And so he does this very funny it's almost like a stand-up routine about eating meat on Friday, and it was
Oh yeah.
hilarious.
Hmm.
So yeah, so that's that religious dogma that you just didn't have. And for me, my mother was Russian Orthodox and my dad was uber Catholic.
Hmm.
And so we were kind of C and E Catholics, even though we went to, grade school,
Yeah.
we went to mass, but we never really always went on Sundays with. But so yeah, we were a little loosey goosey, and my mother was a convert, so she was not really ever completely Catholic. She wasn't a birth Catholic. You know what that's
Yeah.
about.
Yeah.
So anyway, so yeah, so having that religious understanding inherently as a child, and then having other people telling you that these are the rules and this is what God is, and this is something to fear. It was never, it was just totally outside my database.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I never, I mean, this is funny. So my 8th grade science fair project was on UFOs.
Of course. There you go. Yep.
Okay, I did not win. Okay, just so
Yeah. Well, there's
you know
that.
but God bless my dad who made one for me, the engineer. It was there anyway. So again, so that's what we talk about, everybody, is when we're talking about coming here as a spiritual being and having a human experience. That is why we're here. It's like a play, and we do get plunked down with the people we choose to be in these roles with, and it's a constant state of learning, unlearning. This evolution is just, it can be beautiful, but sadly, and this is why you and I do the work we do, is that when people hit a block in the road or they've had some experience that defies their knowing at that time, whether it's cataclysmic or tragic or whatever, that's when they seek out people like Raven and I.
Yes.
So I want to talk a little bit about the work in that way. Is that so? Again, there's, and I know you. So see, Raven and I are a lot alike in that I can't speak for her, but I'm gonna let her speak for herself. But I see myself as a spiritual teacher who utilizes my skills as a medium and clairvoyant and all these other things to help people unravel or decipher that message that's coming from the other side, and then giving them tools of understanding so that they don't need someone like me continually to give you your answers. So it took me 30 years to get that down, to get that labeling, because
Hmm.
again, labels are so limiting to me. And some of those words just bring up such negative understandings of who we really are. So why don't you give us your 10-second
Well, and I
commercial
think,
on how.
similarly, I've always focused on people who have high stress and communication issues and who are in trauma. And, you know, I feel like my job is to help people to wake up to what's really going on behind their lives, so that they get that faith, that trust in their own inner knowing enough that, again, they become their own wizards, they become their own magicians, they become the shapers of their own lives. So they're not looking for 50 other people to do that for them or to find the answer, because what I teach people to do is be still and listen, and to be more cognizant of all of those messages that we're always getting, from whether it's from dreams or from the synchronicities or from snippets of conversation we hear, or, I mean, there's so many ways that we talk to ourselves, or that the universe talks to us, or God talks to us, however you want to phrase that. To me, in my little pagan world that I live in, everything is alive. Everything. I'll talk to that pencil. I'll talk to the tree, right? I'll talk to my glasses if I can't find them, and it all works for me. So, I often tell people, if you if you think of your waking life much more like it's a dream that you are interpreting, and you think of your dreams much more like the concrete messenger that we think waking life is, we get a whole lot better picture of what's really going on.
That is profound. And this video is saved and people can watch this over and over and over again. So folks, if you don't write anything down during these events that I do, or what we're doing with Raven today, we're going to give you guys some seriously wonderful information that you can really just take and review, because this is, again, I always speak it in one language and Raven's speaking it in another. And even though we're speaking it in these different words, they're still meaning the same thing. We're still talking about the same thing, just in two different contexts. So that's what I'm loving about this, because again, for me, I'm always just the head on, I'm always the, one doing the talking. And it's wonderful to hear what I do from another perspective. This is just wonderful. But yes, so that's it, is that the life is the dream. This is the role, and who we are is not the life. We're here to put on this meat suit and navigate through the series of experiences, and we can make this absolutely anything we want.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the challenge, is that, when we're so utterly human, we can't see that higher, picture. And so that's the part I love for people, is when I take them way up. It's almost like putting them in a hot air balloon and taking them way up here,
Mm-hmm.
and seeing this in a much bigger perspective from that, exactly what you said. They're like, what? Like, it's like, because it's just not a perspective that you're ever going to really get from a lot of places.
Right. And I think, again, a lot of it has to do with that conditioning about what things mean and what life means and what's important. And, to be productive and to have a certain amount of money and to do things a certain way and to not go out, don't color outside the lines. And it's like, no, no, no. What if none of that? What if none of that were true? What if we're discovering now through this, this interesting experience that we call the world pandemic, if we're actually discovering, hey, it's possible to work from home. Hey, I like it better not talking to everybody I don't want to talk to. Hey, I really am enjoying my family on a whole different level. Oh, crap, I have to deal with that upset that I've been ignoring at home all this time, right? It's, the emergency nature of it. Things emerge so we can see them. And I think that, again, it might not be a comfortable thing, and that doesn't make it a bad thing. It's an enormous thing. It's an exciting thing. And I always knew in my lifetime that this kind of world-changing experience would happen. I didn't know exactly what it was. In fact, I often suspected it was going to be more environmental in nature. But it's like, oh yeah, I think I expected it 15 years ago. So to me, it was late in coming and better late than never.
Well, and I would like to talk about that.
Experience this.
Right. So, again, when we talk about awakening, you had a much different upbringing, to where your maybe awakening wasn't as cataclysmic or traumatic, and bringing you to this, awareness. I would like to talk about that a little bit. So for me, when I had my awakening, it was something I had inherently known as a child, and then got really conditioned away from it by a lot of traumatic things in my life. And I was constantly living a life I knew that was not who I was. So it was like wearing costumes. Everything I did was not for the right reasons, and all of that. So again, I bought into it, and just, it was easier to comply than it was to, do that. But I was very behind the scenes, passive aggressive about stuff. But when I had my awakening, it was fascinating, because it preceded that 2012. Well, it happened way before that, but when I started noticing the signs, I mean, crows. I mean, I could not ignore the message anymore, that this is a time for me to awaken. And so when we talk about magic, which is something I really wanted to talk about, crow represents that magic. And so, oh my God, I would come in my parking lot at the herb store, and my parking lot would be filled with crows. They would be flying in murders over the store, all heading in one. I'm like, boy, something seriously large is on its way. I mean,
Yeah.
something is coming from that void that is so monumental.
Yes.
And yeah, so anyway, there were a lot of signs, and that's just it. We were, so busy trying to unravel the conditioning that, for me, it defied everything I was ever taught.
Hmm.
And finding that authenticity has probably been the most beautiful thing I've ever experienced in my life, in shedding all that conditioned bullshit,
Yeah.
you know?
Yep. And for me,
So
it was, the good news and the bad news of early experience that, my childhood, interesting as it was also, my father was an alcoholic. My grandmother was agoraphobic. My grandfather had come back from the war, a morphine addict, and and literally went cold turkey one day. And that was the end of that conversation. My mother, who always worked, died suddenly when I was 13, just had turned 14 years old. So there was a lot of mayhem, and it left me this space to listen to myself rather than authority. And out of that, right? And also my family, let me tell you, is not very big on freaking authority, right? Don't trust the authorities, right? Just
I'm with
don't
the
do
man.
it. Exactly. So, from their experience of war and the government and and anyway, blah blah blah. So I came out of it being alone, but in a way that I also felt um, connected to the larger reality, connected to nature, connected to my dreams. I mean, my grandmother would see her dead brother Mac in the house. I was there for, saw all those kinds of things happen. So for me, it was neither, it's like the other worlds were just part of life. They weren't supernatural. They weren't paranormal. It was just normal. It was just normal to wake up and see grandma talking to Uncle Mac in the middle of the night. There was nothing weird about that, right? So I was shocked when I got older, and people were freaked out because I would say something that I couldn't have known. But it's like, hey, what do you mean you can't do that? So I had to learn to shut my pie hole, and then eventually decided I just don't care, and brought all that back online. But I was shocked that I was just like, what do you mean? What do you mean you can't talk to your dead relatives? What do you mean?
Right? Oh no, this is why I got my ass kicked every day, and till I went to high school. I mean, you know, start talking about, because again, I was so unaware of social norms, and
Yeah,
social things. My mother was Serbian. Okay, they
yeah,
always talked about ghost stories. There was always mysticism in our house.
yeah.
They, my dad, who was very intuitive, he would have visitations, and yeah. So again, I always told my mother there are dead people walk around in our attic, and I mean, and so that was, and I subscribed to an occult magazine when I was a teenager, when I was a young 12 years old,
Mhm.
and so I was always fascinated with other religions. And so, again, when you go out in that real world, the real world, okay, I'll use that loosely. We go out in that real world, and and you start talking about this stuff, and people are, looking at you like, what?
Where is the straitjacket?
And that's when I started drinking, okay, because it made me social. It
Got
made
it.
me socially compliant. Like I couldn't be authentic, so I might as well just numb myself and be like the rest of you stupid bastards.
Yep,
I
yep.
mean, and that worked only for so long, and then again, so that's what we've done. We've gone from this beautiful spiritual perfect being into these scenarios with family of origin and people in society and culture and all of that. And so then when we have that kind of and again, as I tell everybody, it's not an awakening, it's not one day, it's a series of things that
It's
get
a
you to
series of bricks to the head and getting kicked in the ass enough times, right? That you listen.
well, right. I mean, that's where, that day I was laying on my living room floor, and my ego was so broken at that point that I had no choice but to just comply, really. And it was the most beautiful, wonderful thing that washed over me that day was now I can, now you're finally seeing that you're authentically this thing, you know? And so my ego is just, you know, so fragile and broken and trying to control all these, you know, things in spite of what was happening. And so that's what, you know, so when people tell me, you know, well, okay, especially when they lose their job, it makes me laugh. I always go, "Yay, best day ever," you know, and they joke, they go, "How can you say that?" Well, what we've learned in this process is that our worst day is actually our best day, right?
Yep.
Eventually.
Yeah, it is. You know, and I think, you know, it comes back around to that conversation of us being the elder women, the crones, the restorers of magic, the restorers of the power of the female, because there's such, you know, there's all those conversations about being an old hag, the old crone, and it's like, yeah, the crones are the ones with the power, people. You know, we're the ones with that have been through all that crap for all those years, that have figured out not only how to survive, but also have figured out how to navigate the space, which, you know, that's where I really love that part of my work, where I help people navigate how they're, what's going on in their mind. How do they bring that out into the world? What is magic really like? What is it? I mean, it's a thing, right? It's not just some sort of weird little practice. It moves through reality always and in all ways. And what we need to do to utilize our own magic is to become more deeply aware of how we're already always creating things. We're
Yes.
already doing it. The question is, do you know how you're doing it? And can you do it deliberately?
And how's that working for you?
Right.
Because
How's your, yeah, that's one of my favorite phrases. Well, I've been doing it this way all these years. Well, okay, yeah. How's that working for you? Are you happy? Not so much. Is that relationship great? No, I'm hating my life. Well, okay. Maybe
well,
it's time
well,
to.
and with my magic wand, if with your magic wand, this is what we've created, and we can uncreate it and make it
That's right.
whatever we want it to be.
That's
And
right.
when you have that, so that's the beauty of being this crone. I have nothing to prove. I have no one to impress. You know, I'm to the point now where I'm here to give this wisdom to those who are awakening, who are in search of that magic. The magic is here, but they don't know that, you know, because again, they've been trying to control the outcome of all these things, and control is the biggest illusion, you
Yes.
know, there is. And once you lose control of whatever situation or whatever, that is a prime time to be able to shut off all this stuff and now say, I don't know who I am, and that's okay, you know.
And,
Now
and,
we can really start the magical process.
and real magic isn't about controlling anything out there. It's about being in sync, being in alignment, riding the energy, having allies. It's like if you never went and visited Aunt Mildred and then you expect her to pay for your college, it ain't going to happen, right? So
Exactly.
if you're not in alignment with the powers that be, whatever you want to call them, again, for me, it's the very old, the most ancient pagan ways. I'm not a new age pagan at all. But for me, it's that alignment. People would, even when I was a kid, you know, well, you have to believe in God. It's like, no, I don't believe in God. I have an experience of this awareness that sees me and speaks to me. I don't need a belief. I have an experience. It's different for me. And but it's always been like that. And you know, I think that again, as crones, as the wise women, to bring that knowing back, the how can I say it, the permission to rely on the knowing that's already there. And I think for sometimes the hardest part is people will have a knowing, then they'll try to analyze it and figure it out. Don't do that. And you just go with it. You just do what it's telling you to do, and you'll figure it out along the way.
Well, and that takes trust. And
Yes.
again, trust is faith. I mean, no matter what, again, this is the dynamics of labels that we talk about.
Yes, it
And
is.
so stepping into that, and that's what humans don't do, is they don't trust anybody. You know,
Yes.
they don't trust themselves, they don't trust anybody. And so the thought of having, and again, they've learned to not trust that divinity, you know, that God of their understanding, that is
Yes.
always, you know, and it's a reciprocal being.
Yes.
You know, it's quantum physics.
Exactly.
what you're sending out is being returned to you always,
Oh,
always. And what looks like magic is just normal. Like
right,
that's how it works. But
right.
it's almost like, could you imagine if we went back to like caveman times and we had a book of matches and we lit a match in front of them? Oh my God. They would have been
Hmm.
like, wow, you know, well, that's not, it's just what it is. It's not magic. It's just outside their scope of knowing. So it
Hmm.
appears magical.
Right.
That's what happens with people when we're in this human illusion, is that when those divine things happen, which are happening actually all the time, is that you think that it's magic. And this is just how it works. It just
Well,
appears like, wow, there's
the thing
people, I
is,
always say people are so amazed by the synchronicity, are so amazed by the, you know, that they're missing the damn message.
right. Well, and I think, again, some of it is the misunderstanding of what magic is. Magic isn't wiggle my nose like Samantha and the vacuum goes by itself, right? Magic
Although
is,
that would be nice.
it would really be nice. I've tried it, never had it work. But anyway, it's not that. Like this is magic, and the magic that is real is much more, how can I say it? It's profound, it's deep, and it's also a whole lot scarier than the magic people think that magic is, because real magic requires self-knowledge and full responsibility. Because without that, nothing moves. The energy does not move. And so you'll see that people who I've worked with people who don't really want, they don't want to do the work. They want somebody to listen to them say how they can't do anything differently and they're stuck and they're victims of themselves. And you're supposed to say, oh yeah, poor you. And well, I don't do that. So,
Yeah, me either.
that doesn't work for me.
Okay, wait, I'm going to stop now. Okay, people, I'm just letting you know that if you call me or Raven, this is who you get. You're not going to get the candy coated, what's my future? Is this the one for me? You're going to get what you're looking at tonight. I mean, this is who we, and I love that. Thank God. Because again, this is the beautiful part about that. People don't want to hear that. They want to hear what they want to hear. And that's okay too. Okay, because you know what? The message will repeat.
Yeah. Yeah.
The universe will continually deliver that
Yeah.
same thing, whether Marianne Goldweber is in the room or Raven Dana's in the room or not. And that's the magic.
Yeah.
That's for me the fun part, is to watch it go off and then have this
Yeah.
message going on and on and on. Even my kid knows a message when he hears one. I mean, and so that's the fun part. So yes, I'm just letting you all know that, this is spirituality. This is building a spiritual toolbox.
Yeah, well, it is, because it's not, again, it's not new age light. It's not all, flowers and unicorns shooting glitter out their butts. It's like, it's none of that stuff. Like, that is not what this is.
Nope. It's better actually. I would rather have dragons blowing fire than unicorns shitting rainbows.
Exactly, exactly. It just, yeah, it doesn't do much for me. But that's the thing, you call it, light workers, and that's true. And it's also, you got to get your hands dirty. You got to put your hands in the dark places. You have to do that. And it's just like that idea of, something evil is coming at me, for lack of a better word. I don't generally use that word, but let's say if something shitty is coming at me, I'm not going to stand there and take it. B, I'm not going to pretend I can just love it away, because I'm not Mother freaking Teresa. I'm not going to pretend I am, but I will create a barrier, and I will let that bounce off that barrier and go right back to whoever that is. Now, whether that means that barrier is my fist, or that means that barrier is actually a magical, an intentional, deliberate boundary that sends all that energy back. So to me, it's like that. There's nothing bad or wrong or evil about sending back what you've been sent. And I have no qualms about doing that. It's just, again, it's reality. This is part of reality.
Well, and intent. And so when we look at this holistically, and so people, the word holistic, it means treating the whole.
Yes.
There's aspects of the whole, so the physical body, the emotional body, the spiritual body, or our soul, or whatever this our spirit energy is, but they're all reliant on each other. So whether what's Raven's saying is whether she sets a physical boundary with someone or setting an emotional boundary with herself and someone, or whether it's a spiritual boundary, you have to be able to stand in that darkness and not move. You have to be able to understand how the dark operates. And, you can't have the light without the dark.
No,
So yeah, I mean, I'm all about, glitter fling. See, that's what I call some of that glitter fling and hula hoop spirituality. Okay. I mean, that's veneer. Okay. And when you are with, for instance, indigenous peoples or magicians or people that are really living that authentic core spirituality, you know, you can't work with other people until you've stood in that dark place.
that's right.
And people are so afraid of their own darkness that they're not, they're the fear that, again, that fear thing. I've stood in
Well,
some things that are just so incredibly dark. See, and
yes.
that's where people use the God and devil, good and evil.
Yeah.
It's really just absolute light or absolute darkness, and it's just, the absence of light. And so when you can stand in that and not be, and be powerful in your own knowing, you can't just do this work. It's not that simple.
No, 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 you can't. And I think it's particularly apt conversation for now because this whole, our unwillingness to embrace, understand, and stand in our darkness makes the unfelt, unrealized, unclaimed aspects of ourselves show up culturally for us to work with. And so, racism as an example for what's happening right now. When we don't deal with it on a personal level, on a private level, on a family level, on a neighborhood level, when we stand in silence while things happen around us, it will, by its nature, work to get our attention. And this is for our greater good. It has to. If we don't get a brick to the head that wakes us up, well, we'll get a ton of bricks to the head, right? And because this is how reality works. This is how nature is wired. This is for our greater good. So it is imperative that we look at, face, deal with the dark parts of ourselves. And I don't mean like the evil or wrong parts, just the dark parts, the urges that we suppress, the fear that we don't deal with, the anger that we pretend isn't there, the prejudice that we swear we don't have when we do. I mean, that's something I come across all the time. People saying, I'm not fill in the blank. I'm not sexist. I'm not racist. And I'm like, the hell you're not.
Right.
Right? I send them, there's this great website. It's called Implicit at .harvard.edu, right? Implicit.harvard.edu, where you can go and take all of these tests. And it's for implicit bias. And you could do it for anything, whether it's for people of color or for gender or for age or for whatever the hell it is. But you come out of that going, holy crap, I had no idea. And it's because it's implicit, because we don't know at what age and at what level these things have been unconsciously programmed into our thinking. We don't know why every time a person that looks a certain way comes down the street, we cringe. We don't even know we cringe because it's normal. So if we don't explore that stuff, well, here we get what you get. And here we are today.
And here we are, right.
Right.
And again, just because it's not in someone's perception doesn't mean it's not happening.
Doesn't mean it's not there.
And everybody's walking around in their own personal illusion. And again, nothing would be worse for people to. I think that's a safe place because ignorance is lack of information. And again, just because people are ignorant doesn't mean that you're bad. Okay. It just means you don't know any better. And so again, that process of working through awakening to that realization unravels your whole fucking life.
Absolutely.
Some people realize they've been ignorant for so long, and when they finally see the bias in their ignorance, that it would unravel their whole belief structure.
Right. If I'm not that, who am I? If I'm that, it feels like death.
Yes, and there
Right.
is a grief process with that. I've had so many great conversations over the last 48 hours, well, along, but just especially over the last 48 hours, with people, and I wrote this like manifesto today about that, is that we can't change what we can't acknowledge, whether that's in our own life, whether it's in our house, or whether it's in our communities.
Right.
And the problem is people are so afraid to be to see their ignorance
Yes.
that they would rather remain ignorant. And that's painful. That's a painful place to live.
Well, and the problem with that, not only is it a painful place to live, it also does not take away our responsibility. And so, and I don't mean like the blamey, shamey kind. I'm not talking about that. I mean our ability, our actual ability to respond rather than react, our ability to be proactive rather than only reactive to everything. So the more we live in that ignorance, that void of knowing, the less actually able we are to make anything happen, because we're always in reaction. We're not doing anything directly to move forward.
Right, defending our position, and
Yes,
is it not healing anything?
correct.
And so once, I've always said that I would rather wake up to the pain of my ignorance than to live every day in ignorance, because it's hurting not only me but other people.
Yes.
That lack of knowing is affecting people that you don't even know. And so, yeah, so again, this is amazing stuff. And there's so much psychic stuff going on today. I can't even tell you. I feel like I don't have, like I keep getting interrupted with kind of messages. Let me just see who wants to say hello. Well, and so that's the beauty of this. So this is what they told me. So they want to remind us that there are things going on behind the scenes. There are these spiritual things that are working very hard at moving the current to wellness and healing and inclusiveness, and we're all in the way, and people are running around with their hair on fire, and or in denial, and they're in the way of all this beautiful stuff that the universe is trying to get into this world. And so that's why I see my role as a light worker is to really shine a light on the darkness, or the things that are not working proactively in this human world from this higher spiritual perspective. So I don't see myself as a light worker, glitter flinging hula hoop. I
Right.
see myself as this fucking giant spotlight that shows up and illuminates the darkness. And there's like all these cave dwellers going, "Oh,
Yeah,
my eyes." And then there's other people who are like, "Cool, this is fucking awesome."
yeah, yeah.
So again, that's when I say light worker. That's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about I show up, and Dana, I know you know this. I mean, Raven, you show up, and shit just happens.
Yeah, shit happens. And I see myself, my role, as I take people by the hand and I lead them into the dark. So they're scared, they don't want to go, they don't want to, but once they're in there and their eyes adjust, they can see things they never knew were in there. And then they can do things they never thought they could do. So like that's my gig. My gig is to be that bird, the raven, the between worlds bird, and take them into the between and show them what's in there. And that not only do they not have to be afraid of it, but like this is such a big part of who we are, to embrace all of that.
Absolutely.
That does require that we step up and look at those things, look at our ignorance, and frickin' do something about it. That the worst thing people say is, well, that's just the way I am. No, no, that is,
That's
whoever
who you've
told
been
you that.
conditioned to be,
Right,
right?
right. It's who you happen to be at the moment, and that doesn't mean you have to keep being that.
Well, and
It,
that's convenient.
goes,
Isn't that convenient?
oh, very convenient.
So again, that's the beauty of this, is that I can be that spotlight out in this world and
Yes,
illuminate someone's darkness. So people have been trying to put me out my whole life. But
yep,
then the people that are being defended by that light are willing to go then into their own darkness to find that light
yes,
and to stoke that fire and to find that power,
yes,
that connect with that power place, and
yes.
in their soul's purpose here. So yeah, so that's wow. Yeah, that's what we're doing here. So So let's talk. And people don't understand sometimes some of this terminology that we use. And again, these are just labels that describe things, okay? And how Raven uses words and how I use words are pretty similar but different. But in different worlds, these words mean something else. So let's talk about the transitions in the feminine transitions
Hmm.
that bring us to a place of being a crone
Yes.
or an elder or
Yes.
grandmother. Okay, so in Native American indigenous culture, they would call the crone the grandmother.
Yes.
And so the I want to talk about those rites of passage and what they look like in your terminology.
Well, it's very similar. The crone is the woman whose energy is no longer going to either birthing, right, or the possibility of birthing. So you've gone through menses. It's not all crones have, but most crones have. But it's that energy shift where the power is then seated in the woman and no longer leaves.
Exactly. So the energy that our body would use normally to get ready for and produce life,
Yes,
or the possibility of life every month, is not now being expended that way. So it's being honed inside as a personal power.
correct.
So it's coming to that cycle's end that we are now that more powerful than we've ever been.
More powerful than we've ever been. And in that power also comes the greater depth of wisdom of the ancestors of our matrilineage that we were sorting our way through before and feeling our way through until now our power is our own and we can reach back more deliberately, more directly, and have and claim that wisdom and then move it forward through us. And I think that's, again, psychologically also true for women who suddenly start to think about their mothers and their grandmothers and what they learned to be and what they learned not to be, the lessons that they took away and the lessons that made them run in a different direction. There's still wisdom there. And I think, once we have been in that crone realm and we are feeling our own power and care much less about what other people think, although frankly that was never my bag
Right.
anyway. But
Mine either.
right, but the point being is that it also gives us greater access um, to that direct knowledge because we're no longer expending energy elsewhere.
And for me in the work, it's it's really fascinating because when I was awakening back in the day, I channeled for myself for many years before I ever did this for other people because I had to unravel my own shit show. And through that process, there was nobody, Dana. Like there were so few people doing this
Yes.
work back then
Yep.
that I could turn to, that I could trust.
Yep.
And I was very blessed. I mean, like I said, I knew Neil. I knew Lynette. I had some psychic friends that were at least, able to help me navigate that spiritual realm from, that perspective. And it was until I met my spiritual teacher, Dave Whitefeather, was really the one who really helped me come to a really an understanding of the importance of not only the awakening, but the responsibility of the work.
Yes.
And so now people are, girl, they're waking up at breakneck speed. Okay. And this is what they told me back in the day was that the people are going to be awakening and they had no elders.
Right.
And okay, well, I had no idea this is, I mean, again, I knew it was going to be big, but when you actually
Right.
are in it, you're
Okay,
going,
here we
holy
are.
shit,
Yes.
this is not what I really anticipated. I don't know what I thought, but it wasn't this, but it's interesting. But so now people are awakening at breakneck speed. And they told me back then I was going to I was going to create a village. And it was because as the people were waking, they had no ancestral ties, and that they worship the man on the money because he's the only grandfather they know. Okay, that was the most profound thing I think I've ever channeled ever. And that's exactly what's happening.
Yes.
The grandfather doesn't exist. It's an illusion, and people are so far away from their ancestral ties, they don't
Yes.
know who they are.
Yes.
And so we're creating those new paradigms of what is our core belief, and that's why we're in this position as elders to help give those tools to those that are awakening. I'm not out there to, you'll never see me on like, creating a commercial or advertising what we do. We're not those people, because people find you when they're ready. And so it's not something I'm like, you've got to, there are enough people waking up who want help. I'm not worried about the folks that are still wandering around in the,
Mhm.
running with scissors. Okay. I don't have time for that. But again, if enough people,
Yeah.
I'm like, don't do that. But it's because they're going to self-destruct and they'll awaken eventually, or not. I
Or
mean,
not.
people don't wake up till they are dead, and then boy, that's an awakening. Let me tell you.
Yep, yep.
So again, that's the work. And so as the world awakens, and they don't know what to do, that's where, you know, where there's one or two of us, then there's, and we're creating this beautiful ripple
Mhm.
of awakening people who are going to be handing those tools to their children to, and so that's why this is about inclusion,
Yes.
not separation.
Yes, and I think also, especially with, again, this day and age, as women, as crones, we're also restoring the divine feminine to its rightful place, that it's bringing back into equal balance that which feminine thinking and being brings to the planet, that has for so long been, again, ignored, shoved under the rug, been violated, been shut down. And
Hmm.
it's like, nope, that time is over. It's time to restore the balance.
Well,
And I
and
think it's vitally
right.
important.
Sorry to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
So what I've been seeing, and this has been part of the most interesting aspect of this, is that younger women, younger people are awakening faster, and the people that are having the hardest time with this are women our age.
Yes.
Women who are waking up realizing their whole life, that their life was defined by the roles of their
Yes.
life, and they had no identity of their own. It
Yes.
is the most, it is the hardest work, because there's so much time gone by, and so they don't know who they are without their children or their partner or their work.
Somebody telling them what to do, right? I said, there's three levels of crazy. We, right? If we're not doing what we actually want to do, then we're doing what we think we should do, which is a little oppressive. But then the second layer of crazy is when we're doing what other people think we should do, which is even worse. But the highest level of crazy is when we do what we think other people think we should do.
Oh, right?
Right? And then we're pissed off when they don't appreciate us for doing what we think they thought we should do. Oh, for God's sake, right? So it all comes back to that. If you can just come back to doing what you, in your little heart of hearts, what your gut wants you to do. Again, this is where people are trained not to trust themselves and to outsource their authority and to do all that. It's like people will say, well, I'd never go to work again. Yeah, you would, because you have a preference for not living under a bench. You would go to work, right? Oh, I
Exactly.
would, right?
But you wouldn't be giving it the same power or energy.
No, and you might actually pick something, dare I say it, that you enjoy. It
What would
could,
that be like?
right? It could happen. So, the thing is, even if we've gone 30 or 40 or 50 or 60 years stuck, it's never too late to have a happy childhood. We just
Hmm.
have to be willing to have it now. So if you didn't get to have one then, well, that's okay. They still sell coloring books. There's still grass to roll down the hill on. There's still kids to
Okay.
play
No,
with.
okay, I'm going to hold you on that one. If I roll down that hill now, girl, I might not get up. Okay.
Well, I hear you.
In my
We'll be,
mind, I'm 22.
we'll
Okay,
be
but
down there with the wheelbarrow. We'll be good.
okay. Pillows at the bottom or something. Roll me in bubble wrap and then send me
There you
down.
go. There you go. We can.
Yeah. Well, again, exactly. And that's the beauty of it, is that and this is really the work I do quite frequently with people, is the process of grief, that I help them through that process of grief from that spiritual perspective. And we have to work through that process of grief to get to that new normal,
Yeah.
defining that new normal. And that process, especially for women, is so difficult, and men too, for different reasons. But anger is such a hard thing for women to express.
Yes.
we've been taught that, you're not allowed to be angry. You don't have the right to be angry. And so we either internalize that or we create these
Sadness,
dysfunctional, oh, it's terrible.
self-destruct, all of the above.
Right. So when we look at addiction or we look at self-harm or, food issues or control issues or all those things, all those addictions come from that lack of authenticity and being able to process that, what we've experienced in that, in that way that we clear out those, this human body and our mental body to come to this place of healing.
But again, our emotions get labeled as right and wrong, good and bad. They're just energy moving through the body. So we do what they tell us to do and we're all good. We suppress them and hold them back and we're going to have a problem, right? It's like
It will come out.
right, emotionally constipated until we blow. And it's never a good thing.
It's not pretty.
And like, we don't think it's bad or wrong to, when we're sad, we cry. That's what happens. And then it passes. Or when we're happy, we laugh and that energy passes. But when we're angry, and then we blow. Because it's, we, again, all those taboos around it's wrong and you have to be nice. And it's like, I tell people, really, the first thing I want you to do is stop doing anything nice, because it's poison.
Yes.
It's kind and nice are two entirely different worlds. And nice is bullshit, blowing smoke up somebody's ass in order to, right, look a certain way or make them feel a certain way. No. It's much kinder to tell them what you really think than pretend and let them never know who you really are.
Absolutely.
That doesn't work.
Well, and honestly, I mean, especially when people are talking to me and they're giving me the nice, they're doing the nice, and I'm like,
uh-huh.
I mean, I'm like,
Yeah,
like, who are you trying to convince? People, or I can feel them wanting to say something, and they're going, I go, you okay? And they're like, I'm good. I'm like, oh no, oh, okay, because I know underneath that veneer of nice
Yeah.
is this thing that just wants to be,
Just wants to come out.
just has to come out, right? And again, crying's nice. Crying's nice because it's a little vent, it's a little valve, that, and I go, oh, I'm better now, and then it allows you to keep going back and doing it again. But anger, however,
Yeah.
and that's why when we most women have not been, nobody actually has been taught how to process emotion or anger in a healthy way. And so, like I said, we always joke about I write letters. I go down to the river and yell and throw rocks. And I have always apologized to the rocks before I send them back in the river, because they would took them 1,000 years to get out of the river, and now I'm putting them
There
back
you
in.
are, throwing the little sons of bitches back. God
I
damn.
know, right? I'm like, I'm sorry, rock. Thank you,
Uh-huh.
um, but and that's just is we haven't been taught how to process, and that emotion will come out one way or another, especially that anger.
Yeah, just like anything. What is anger for? Well, it motivates us, and it's designed to protect us.
Yes.
That's what it's for. It's a protection. Now, the problem is that when, like everything else, when we don't let ourselves feel what we feel and things build up, or we're in our heads creating some weird level of that offends me. It's like, okay, what's it to you? Like, really, what? I mean, I say that a lot to people too. Like, I am so offended. Well, what's it to you? How are you offending yourself? Like, what's that about? Like, is that enjoyable? How long would you like to stay offended, right? Well, I'm going to be this way until that person changes. And well, you're going to be dead, because
Right.
it's not going to happen.
The next appointment I make with you is from the other side, right?
Right, exactly. See,
Well, and that's why when we look at this dynamic in our world today, that we look at anytime people have been oppressed or not allowed to be able to express their whatever, authenticity, pain, whatever, John Lennon said it best, is that, when people, how did he put that? He goes, suffering people don't say, excuse me, would you please stop doing that? They just scream.
they just
And
blow.
so when we're looking at this dynamic of oppression in our world, and the inability of people to be heard or validated or honored, it comes out, and it's going to come out. And this is it.
It has to come out.
Right. So I'm not, condoning behavior. So again, compassion doesn't mean condoning bad behavior. Compassion means understanding,
Yes.
coming from that shared experience of understanding,
Yes.
and being able to, stand in that and understand why it's happening,
Right.
and then being able to navigate through that and help with this healing process that's going to come there with
Right.
after this. We have a great opportunity right now to
Yes.
heal some
Yes.
seriously core
Yes.
shit that's going
Yes.
on in our world. But
Well, yeah.
going to the place where you're judging the behavior and there is no compassion or there's apathy
Right.
is just like pouring salt on a wound.
Right. Well, and and that's the deal. And yes, anger is energy, and it can be explosive, and it can also be used to do something really powerful and dramatic
Absolutely.
and
Anger
so
can be a great motivator.
and you have to learn how to use it. You're not born knowing how to use it. And again, like that, if you've been oppressed for a very long time, anybody who's experienced any kind of oppression reaches that boiling point. And so, yeah, saying, well, you're wrong for doing that. It's like, what else are they going to do? If that person has done every other thing they know how to do and has not been heard, there's not much left. It's like the toddler that wants attention and wants attention and wants attention and finally throws themselves on the floor and starts to scream. What else are you going to do? I've tried everything else.
Right. When you don't have the words to explain this or to be heard,
Yes,
they resort to behavior.
that's right.
It's going to come out one way or another. And so that's the only thing they have at that moment is
Right.
to be noticed. And and people are so like ignorant of that, because they're ignorant of their own process. They
Well,
don't even,
that's yes.
so they can't come to that place of compassion because they've never allowed that for themselves. They're so, but I mean, they got the girdle on, they got the, the bullet bra. They're so buttoned up that, you know, they if that all came out, they'd be like, it's
That's
like
right. Well, and somewhere back in there, they're thinking, well, I have a marriage that I don't like, and I have a job that I hate, and I have kids that don't appreciate me. You don't see me doing that. It's like,
oh, but girl, if you could, it's a freedom that comes with finally letting all that out.
letting it out. Yep.
Wasn't there, remember that, do you remember there's this back in the 70s, they did so much crazy stuff. Do you remember the primal scream?
Of course.
Okay. So yeah, like when all these people that love you hold you down and you just like let this guttural thing out, finally. Excuse me, that's what's going on now.
Yes.
Except there's nobody there to be able to,
Support. There's no
right.
support.
There's no support during that process.
Right.
How horrible.
Yeah.
So again, that's the work. That's the work.
That is the work. Yeah.
And that's why when we're out in this world, me and you, Mercedes, and what's your stripper name? What's your dark half's name? I gave mine a name.
It is Raven because I was not born Raven. I was born Robin.
Oh, okay. Oh, how funny. Robin and then Raven.
Yeah, I'm not a Robin. And that was the thing. I was never a Robin. I was always more a Raven. And my grandfather, always used to tell stories about this pet crow that he had and how I was more like that, more like that personality-wise than a Robin. And eventually, I legally changed my name.
That's awesome. That's
so
wonderful.
Raven is my dark name, and
So
I've taken it on permanently.
So my dark name is Mercedes, and untrained, she was a piece of work, okay? But now that we've come into balance with her, she's the fire in my furnace. She's the thing that doesn't give a shit what people think.
Yep.
Judiciously, again, there's a balance in this, and it's how we use it. But you have to come to a place of acceptance of that dark aspect of who we are,
Yes.
because without the dark there is no balance with that. You can't have one without the other.
No, you can't. And for me, I flipped it deliberately so that Raven could take care of Robin. And Robin could just be little, and Robin could just be back, right? Robin could just be her little self, and Raven could run the show.
Wow.
Yeah.
See, and that's a beautiful thing. That does not make you schizophrenic, by the way.
Oh,
I had a group of psych nurses one day when I was talking about my
Yeah,
my
yeah,
alter ego, my shadow self, and my, and they stopped and they go, "Have you been psychologically evaluated?" And I'm like, "Absolutely. Are you
yes,
kidding?"
yes. Are you kidding me?
Right? Yeah, I'm more normal than you all, so I'm just saying,
It's like Sheldon on The Big Man. I've been tested, and I'm not crazy.
And I'm not crazy. And I am so Sheldon too. So again, this is wonderful stuff, and I'm so grateful for you tonight. So I'm going to take a look real quick at what we got, all our comments that are going on over there. Oh, we got some fun stuff here. Hold on. All right. I'm actually going to probably take a couple calls for Raven or myself. Oh, your daughter's on.
Oh,
She goes, oh, she's laughing. She goes, "You guys rolling down a hill swearing like sailors would be hilarious."
she's right.
Oh my God, how much, okay, so this is funny. So I always, I want to start creating croning ceremonies.
Yes,
Okay. And so I always had this idea that I wanted to be rebirthed. Like I wanted to create it like almost a rebirthing ceremony. So I'm
yes.
at the top of a hill in a tent, and
Uh-huh.
there's a slip and slide that goes down the hill to
Uh-huh.
my village of sisters, okay? And I'm going to come out of that tent naked, and I'm going to rebirth myself down that hill.
I like it. Let's do it.
Oh my God, how fun would that be?
Let's set
Oh
it
my
up.
God. I said, like the tent represents the womb, and then you just come
That's right.
down the slip and slide. And I'll be like, woohoo!
Works for me. See how many people we can get to sign up for that.
Okay, Pandora, let's get around that girl. That's what we're doing next. Oh my God, this is so funny. Oh, they're so cute. Susan Harper. How do you find those things? What? Oh, how do you find those things? What you were born under? Oh, astrology. I think that's what she's saying. So, astrology is it's kind of like taking a picture of the sky the minute you're born. And are you there, Raven?
I'm here.
Okay. It's like taking a picture of the sky the minute you're born, and then we put this grid over it. As astrologers, they put a grid over it. It tells you where the planets lie, and that is your chart. Okay, and then that gets interpreted. So we find that out by now we have lovely things like computer programs that do that for us. Um, and so all we need is your date of birth, your time of birth, and location in order to run your natal chart. So your natal chart is what the sky was the minute you were born, and that's how you find out your sun sign, your moon sign, your rising sign, all that. So for instance, my sun is Pisces Aquarius, like you. We're Pisces, but we're kind of cuspy.
Mhm.
And then my moon and rising are both Cancer. I was
Yeah,
born during
my
five
moon is
retrogrades.
Cancer and my rising is Aries.
Okay, well, see, that makes you a little more fiery than me. Although I'm more aloof and lone wolfy, that for me, that all that fluidity of the moon energy, like I said, when the moon is full or new, I'm a,
Oh yeah.
oh, good Lord. Okay, that is instinct. Women are taught to be polite instead of acknowledge their instincts.
Yes.
Well, again, oppression and repression are some of the most, it will make you sick. It'll make you mentally sick, physically sick, spiritually sick.
Yeah.
And that's what we are, that's what Raven and I do, is we are spiritual practitioners that help facilitate the healing that will lead to healing with those other aspects. And again, I do, and I know Raven does. We refer people to people. Like
Hmm.
I'll refer you, that I think it's important that you work through some of your human psychological aspects with a mental health professional. That we need a different practitioner sometimes for all those bodies. And there are practitioners that are more holistic. What do you think, Raven?
Oh yeah, I agree. And even, body workers, I'll send people to go get a massage. I'll send people to go to a chiropractor or if they're super anxious, they might want to have a conversation about brain chemical imbalance. Like there are people that I have found that are uncoachable unless their chemistry is balanced. They can't process.
Exactly. And, so that is why we take this work so incredibly seriously. And I was taught early on, there's a huge discernment that has to come with this work and a responsibility with it. And, I am not a mental health professional. I am not a physician. Um, and when you're that kind of, because I've seen sometimes people in their ignorance tell people things that are not correct or that are could be even more damaging. And so I think it's very important that you seek out the counsel of those people and those professionals that you feel confident and comfortable with, that have a reputation. And sometimes you got to dig a little bit for the right people, right, Dana? I mean, Raven, is that
Absolutely.
what
I
you're
think
saying?
you have to, pretty much interview them. You have to know that you're in some kind of alignment and they're going to actually listen to you, and, not just somebody else is going to tell you what to do. So yeah, you got to talk to people.
Well, and I also let them know that I do work with other professionals. So if they have a question or need to call
Yeah.
me and we can work together on
Yes.
in that way, I think that is a powerful statement to, people that are willing to work holistically with the other team, members
Yes,
of the team.
absolutely. And I've done a lot of that too, is working with someone like a nutritionist or somebody else that they're seeing, where I'll be in on the call and talk about how what they're doing over there aligns with what we're doing over here, or like that. And sometimes too, if people are not feeling particularly strong about picking, like they're not good pickers of people. Sometimes they'll, right, they'll ask me to find somebody for them that might be a good fit, and I'll call around and I'll find somebody. So, all of
Exactly. And that's the beauty of the village. It is a huge networking and we do have a lot of resources for to send you to the right places to find, what you need. So, we work with places like Lakata or some of the, recovery resources, some of the places that have mental health services, and or we know people specifically that are more open to this kind of, understanding and are willing to do that. And that's happening more and more now. You're finding more mental health professionals who really are open to that because you can't deny it, that aspect of people at this point. So there's not the same stigmas that there used to be with recovery or mental health help. Back in the day, being labeled could lose your job. You could, you're labeled crazy, and there was no way out of that. And so there was stigmas going to mental health at that time, or they would just institutionalize your ass and give you shock treatments or.
Yep.
God, I mean, just like barbaric stuff. And so that's why people shied away from getting the help they needed, especially women. I mean, especially women, they were just what? Remember hysteria? Like they
Hysteria.
would I saw a photo. We'll have to talk about that another time. Yeah, so women would have hysteria,
Yeah.
and they'd have to go in for these therapies with this. Oh,
Yeah.
sick. No wonder we're fucked up.
Yep.
My poor mother. I have to tell you something, Raymond. My mother was a Renaissance woman. She left a one-horse town in Pennsylvania, the first one to graduate high school, and she took herself and her cousin to Chicago.
Wow.
And she got a job with IBM as a key punch teacher.
Good.
And she learned all that, right?
Yeah.
Well, then this bell went off. Her family, her impoverished family in Pennsylvania, were relying on her to be their savior, send them money, help them out because the mine closed up and it was just a nightmare there. And that poor woman, she was also told, well, you're almost 28. You're damaged goods at 28. If you're not married by 28, you're not, nobody wants, something's wrong with you. And that she gave it all up and married my dad and lived a life she hated.
Wow. Yep.
And we heard about it every single day.
I bet.
Oh, it was horrifying. Horrifying. And it caused such suffering for everybody. So anyway, this is yeah, so again, when we look at our conditioning and we look at where we come from, and on some level I have to look at my mother and say, well, I don't have those same limitations. We do not have those same cultural, societal limitations that my mother had, and I'm doing this for her. I'm doing some of these things for her because she couldn't. And now I have a responsibility not only to my ancestors, but I am their promise. I'm the reason
That's
for
right.
everything they did. And so I am the one who is here to take the ball and run with it and give it to my kid before I leave here. And and
Exactly.
that's the ripple that we're creating. And so whether your family is the children you give birth to or my cosmic family, that I'm mother to many as a crone, right?
Absolutely. And I think our behavior, when we come out from under the things that we learned that way, it honors them. It restores our relations to their, to what they could have been. I think, they're smiling somewhere on the other side. And, my mother too, my mother always worked. I barely knew her. She was out of the house all the time. We lived with my grandparents, which means my mother lived with her mother-in-law, who had one only son. So my grandma was not very kind to my mother, right? I mean, the only time I ever saw my mother with her nails painted was in the casket at her funeral.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that is when, at age 14, I started painting my nails for the first time, and they have been painted ever since. It's in honor of my mother. And also to remind myself, I will never do the things, I will never put up with what she put up with.
Right. And it's coming full circle. It's
Yes,
like, we're here to solve the karma of a generation. We're
yes,
here to to be their best and eliminate their worst and
yes,
be that change in that dynamic.
yes.
And so yes, I think that this is powerful stuff, and I'm so grateful for you tonight, Raven. So let's take a couple questions. If somebody wants to call and you have a question or uh, want our perspective, spiritual perspective on something, or give us a call at 216-324-2657. I'm going to write my number here. Or did I do it? Any questions for Raven or myself? We'll see if the phone rings. Yeah, I love cold calls. Those make me laugh. Okay, so your mother's talking again. I mean, your daughter's talking again. Oh, that was Freudian.
Wasn't it though? I think we've probably done it that way at some point.
I'm sure. Well, like I always said, Jared's the sandbag on my balloon. He's such an old man. Like he came here
Uh-huh.
to. I always said he came here to parent me. So one time, this is so funny. I mean, Jared was like such an old guy. I always said, thank God they sent me a good one because I'd have killed a bad one. So Jared was just like a little saint, a little angel, and I've never even yelled at him, because he was just always good. Anyway, so so one day our gas got shut off. I had the herb store. I mean, I was in the middle of a door, so I had all this stuff going on. And Jared said to me, he goes, "Mom, why is the gas shut off?" And I said, "Well, because I didn't pay the bill." And I didn't have the money. And he goes, "Well, didn't you buy me a video game yesterday?" And I go, "Yes." He goes, "Why'd you do that?" I said, "Well, because I wanted to make you happy." He goes, "Mom, hot water makes me happier than a video game."
Well, there you go.
I'm like, "Who are you? Who are you?" Okay, so here, Pandora says, "I feel public schools are large teachers of oppression."
Yes.
Thinking about how to make our daughter strong enough to be okay with themselves once they're out in this school. It doesn't squash them and all the power they were taught at home. That's a really wonderful awareness. But like we said, you and I went to Catholic school. I went to Catholic school, okay? And in spite of, I wish I had more tools. But my son always knew that this was just another perspective on spirituality that isn't completely always accurate. And we always had convos, these teachable moments that came with that.
Hmm.
So he was never indoctrinated in the same way. And he had a toolbox when he went there. So I think that's kind of what, Pandora's saying is that Jared retained his integrity and his authenticity in spite of going there. It wasn't the same Catholic school either. Okay. He never even had a nun. He didn't even know he only knew what nuns were because we knew nuns from service work. But
Hmm.
he's like, I go to Catholic school and there's no nuns. And so, yeah, I think that, no matter what institution you're in, it's not about just sending your child to an institution and letting them have whatever freedom with that. I think as parents, we have to be involved in those institutions and we have to be a teacher in that process as well with our children.
Well, I
We
think
can't,
it's public schools, are just as limiting. I mean, they're just as crazy pants as parochial schools. And it does require a lot of energy and a lot of involvement. I mean, my girls went to public schools, and they, by the time they were in high school, they were sick of me showing up at school. Later on, glad that I was there going to bat for them, but still sick
Right.
of me showing up and saying, you will not do that to my child. You will not talk to my kids that way. I mean, we used to set up mental health days when they were in high school. And then I started getting phone calls, you can't have them out of school anymore. And I said, so what you're saying is I have to lie to you. I have to tell you that they're sick because you won't let them take off for mental health. And then there was silence. And I went,
Right.
okay, I know how to do this. I can do this, right? And then I'd say, well, then I'd call and say, okay, well, you know, we're pagans. The moon is full. They're taking tomorrow off.
That's awesome.
Right. So equinoxes, solstices, Halloween. Hey, we got lots of holidays in there.
Right? We could just
I
be
do it.
celebrating almost anything at this
I know how
point.
to do it, right? But it's hard. I mean, I actually, this is my granddaughter she's talking about, and she is not your usual child. She is not. And I don't have an answer to that question. I think it is very hard.
Well,
When
and it does take a village too. I mean, again, we can't be the only child person in our. As you guys have a beautiful village with, taking care of your granddaughter, and but it's very difficult, especially with single family households, to be that involved in school. And so that's why I think when your children are in school, that I was so lucky because Jared had friends whose moms were also we would share parenting and responsibilities. And I know that when Valerie was there, she was saying and doing the same damn things I would do if I was there. And
yes.
so we really used that village collective to really navigate that school time. It
Mhm.
was, thank God, because and I always saw myself, because I was self-employed and I was able to be there more, much to my son's horror. Okay, I was the lunch lady. Could you imagine?
Ooh.
Anyway, yeah, right. There were kids that absolutely hated me, and because I bust them doing the wrong thing. I mean, they're like, Jared's mother's a psychic. You can't do that. She'll know. Which that got me in big trouble in Catholic school,
Oh, I
by the
bet.
way. Oh yeah, I thought they were gonna have a pole in the parking lot and burn me at the stake one for real. I
Yep.
had a mother complain that I was, yeah. I mean, oh no, again, religious persecution from
Yeah.
the champs of it. So anyway, oh, we got a call. You ready?
I'm ready.
Marianne speaking. How may I help you?
My name is Maha. I'm a friend of Raven.
Oh, it's
Um,
Maha. Okay,
and
you're on air.
okay, hi.
Hi.
Raven was the person that woke me up, that opened me up spiritually and got me on my healing path. So she holds a very special place in my heart.
Oh,
And my question for you ladies tonight, with so many people shifting, so many people waking up, and those of us that have been doing this work for a while, it's forcing us, and like you were talking about, into the deep corners of ourselves to bring that stuff to the light. What is your advice for people who are walking the path that don't quite know what they're doing yet? Like I've tried to talk to people about, okay, here's what's happening, but from a global perspective, do you guys have some words of wisdom for people who are just waking up, and what are some of the things that we can tell them that's going to help them on their journey?
do you understand that, Raven?
Yes, I understand it. And I think part of it, Maha, is you have to
I'm gonna
meet.
hang up now so you can listen, honey. Okay.
Oh, sounds good.
Oh, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Okay, bye bye.
Bye-bye.
I think, Maha, part of it is being able to meet people wherever they're at in their conversation. And with the way things are happening, and it is, obviously a worldwide shift occurring, I think the best thing to tell people is to be adaptable. That it's not survival of the fittest, like the strongest. It's those of us who get through it with the least stress are those of us who accept reality as it is, accept the changes, don't fight them, don't try to go back to something that was, see what new thing gets born from this new experience. And like that, it's like, to be Maha, to be like the midwife of the new thing that's coming requires that you keep the person in labor calm enough that they don't have a misfortune during delivery, right? So there's something about that. If they're not awake and really not awake, which I get what you're saying, I think the best place to enter the spiritual conversation eventually is to start with adaptability and accepting things as they are. Marianne, your thoughts?
Yes, absolutely. And so I use storytelling quite frequently. So I try to find that shared experience in what someone might be, and I intuitively just tell them a story, which kind of gently allows them to take what they need, what they're ready to hear at that time. And so I'll share, like I was talking to, and when you come from that storytelling perspective, it's much more gentler than going, you need to, or you this, or you that. So I was in this I was having a dialogue online today, and somebody asked a question. Now I don't normally intrude with my perspective unless I'm asked. Okay, this is another aspect of the work that until people ask, they think their way's working. Okay, so if even if people aren't asking and they're saying something, or sharing a perspective, I'll just tell a story about how that related with me and how I, shared that. So this person was talking about, he doesn't understand about what's going on in the world today, especially today. And I said, well, that's because, what I've learned in my journey is that I was ignorant of a lot of things just because of the fact of how I was raised and where I was raised and blah, blah, blah. And it was such a gentle and beautiful conversation because he didn't feel attacked. He didn't feel, and I said, and I really was very unaware of my ignorance, and so it was such a beautiful opportunity to allow him to feel validated in what he was feeling, and but for me to share a wisdom without saying how I was getting it or where, but I was doing it in a gentle way so that he would take what he needed and still feel validated. So I think storytelling is a wonderful way to reach people who are not necessarily answering or asking and are not quite awake.
Yeah.
So that's how I approach some of those things as
Yeah.
well, because they're sleeping. So think of them like they're actually sleeping, and alarms going off, and they're kind of rustling around going, oh, I don't really know where I'm at. And so we don't just go up to it and go, wake the fuck up. I mean,
Well, once in a while, if the house is
Okay.
on fire, that's what we do. But other than that,
right. Sometimes that, people don't hear it in your language, like, excuse me,
right.
could you please do this, So we have to kind of turn up the volume once in a while. But yeah, I think that the bigger majority of people, as as they're shifting their consciousness, it's like sleeping, and now awakening alludes to the fact that we've been sleeping. So I think that's the gentle way that I do it, and
Yeah.
with people like that.
And sometimes also, I think you have to be repetitive because, again, they're going to hit the snooze button and go back to sleep. So you have to say it again and again. And we humans get impatient with each other. Well, I said it once, or I told them twice, or they asked me what I wanted and I told them and they're still not doing it. But it takes a lot of repetition for something new to filter into the cracks of the old habit.
Well, and I don't think it's necessarily up to us to create that awakening moment. So, for instance, I had a young man who was an active heroin addiction, okay? And his mother asked me to talk to him, and I'm like, okay, well, I normally don't do that work with people who don't ask,
Right.
So I did. I went over and I gave him the big book, and said, there's a better way. And we had a convo, and I was telling him he was full of shit, and he thought that was funny. And yeah, and I said, but just so you know, honey, I said, another teacher will appear. And I left.
Mm-hmm.
Every day. In fact, an hour later, another teacher appeared. And the next day, another teacher appeared, saying the same damn thing I did day after day. He thought I opened some Pandora's box for him. I mean, he is actually in sobriety
Great.
because of that. But again, this is where you have to let go and let God. I'm just here to plant a seed, and it's not up to me whether it gets watered or tended. And again, I know for a fact that when I get out of the way, the universe will send someone else to deliver the same message, but in a different way. It happens every time, and that's the magic. That's the magic. I guess, so again, eventually people hear it or don't.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not up to me either to make sure they get the message driven home, you know? I love that moment though when people go, "Ah," and you see the light
Yes.
come on.
Yep.
Oh my God, I love
Mine
that.
too.
And this work is, again, it's, you know, when people, we see them in their worst moment and then they go away and then we might never see them again or for a long time. You know, we never get to hear the backstory. I mean, I love the backstory, but I don't need the backstory. But I love that moment where it goes, the light goes on and they just get it. God, it's just awesome. But we're not always there for that,
Mhm.
you know, and that's okay. They'll get it eventually.
One way or another, they'll get it eventually.
Oh, okay. So, do you do a lot of medium work? Like, where you?
I don't do, I wouldn't say I do a lot of me. I get information a lot. I don't always share it, but I do a fair amount. When I'm talking to somebody and something comes through, I let them know.
Okay.
And very often, you know, the way it comes, I don't really know. I just have a memo. So I deliver the memo and see where it goes and see where it takes us, you know, like that. So, you know, most of the time I just say whatever's there. And once in a while, if it's not somebody I know very well, I'll tread very cautiously so I don't frighten them. But generally speaking, yeah, if it shows up, I say it.
Well, and people don't understand that we're always being doing this work is doing this work. We are always being divinely guided by that
Yes.
those presences, and there is a discernment. You're not always supposed to tell people how you get that information,
Right.
and unless they're asking, they really may not be open to that. So it has to come in that more organic way,
Subtle.
thinking it's coming from you versus,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
you know, if you said, "Hi, your dead grandpa's standing here," I mean, people, you
Right.
know,
Oh,
it,
no.
it, it messes them up. But in my work, people come to me because I'm, you know, because I am a medium
Mm-hmm.
and I do channel for them. But even then, in those cases, but you know, teaching people that they don't really need me even for that. But
Mm-hmm.
the our people are communicating with us all the time, and the messages are always coming. So, so that's the work that's a little different when it comes to how I deliver messages, as
Yes.
well as, you know, when Raven delivers messages.
Yeah, I work a little more specifically with helping people read their own minds, read their own signs and signals, so they discover how to interpret things rather than looking for external interpretation. What does this mean? What does that mean? Well, let's look at how your system works and we'll figure that out for you, which is going to be different than for somebody else or somebody else.
Well, and that's why I don't do that uh, psychic work. So when people call me, you know, they have an expectation of who and what I am as a medium.
Yes.
And that's not what I do in the way that they've been taught to use that word.
Right.
You know, I translate telepathic communication into language.
Yes.
From, and you can't, you know, not just conjuring people up, but there's, you know, there's purpose and giving people tools, not just, again, having a chat with, you know, when you leave this body, okay, you don't just go, "Oh, that was nice," and you sit on a cloud and play a lute, you know. That's
Right.
not what happens when we die. You have to, you leave this fallible biological body, and yeah, it's like you're completely clear, but then you have to kind of go through the whole life. And that's why it's so much easier to wake up while you're here than to try and hash all that out over there when nobody can see or hear you, you
Yeah.
know. And that's why the work, you know, none of us went to school for this. That's the most interesting thing. I mean, there are places you can get certified and whatever, and that's okay. However, we all came upon this ability and this vocation, this calling in our own way. You know, so the way I do it is different than the way Raven does it. And there's not one that's lesser or greater or different, but you know, it's all important work. You know, this light and dark work is very important.
Mhm.
And because you know, some of the systems just are letting folks down, and
Oh,
they don't have systems to even turn to.
mm-hmm.
You know, now so many people have been raised with nothing, no
Yeah.
spiritual. I mean, I would rather unravel Catholicism than start with nothing.
And start with nothing. Yeah.
You know, and believing that you are the only source of manifesting in your world.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. I do. I
It's,
do. And,
it's
you
very
know,
challenging.
and again, even, you know, people who don't really have or don't like or didn't agree with their spiritual tradition, I generally just suggest that they go hang out in nature.
Hmm.
Just go hang. I mean, you're connected to this incredible, I mean, literally, viscerally connected to all life everywhere. And all you need to do is get out there away from the noise and the noise in your head and experience that a little while. Just see what happens. It's an experiment. Just see what happens. See what you notice, see how you feel, see what you think when you come back from that. Do it a lot, and then talk to me in a week.
Right? Right. Because, that's where the magic occurs. When you just go do it, you're told
Yep,
something amazing will happen.
yep,
That's why when my little voice tells me to do stuff, I just do it because it's always an adventure
yeah,
and it's always a magical thing that happens once I get there. It's
yep.
fascinating. So anyway, well, thank you so much,
Well,
Raven.
thank you for
So
having me.
so Raven's gonna whatever we talked about tonight. If you want to put that book on, if you want to type that on when you get when you get a
Okay,
chance to
do
look
that.
for the
Yep.
video, and so Raven's website is stresswizardcoaching.com,
And
and
Facebook page of the same name. You can find me there.
and yeah, it takes a village, and I'm not the only teacher in this village. It's just I cannot wait, Raven, until I have another place. Oh my God.
Oh, me too. We could just
Oh,
and you know, I'm still in North Carolina, so it's going to be a minute anyway.
oh, I know. So poor Raven the pandemic hit. Like that's what happened to me. I'm here with my sister. This was supposed to be a temporary stop, right?
Yeah, there you have it.
Oh, but there's purpose in this,
Oh,
you
absolutely.
know? And that's what people don't understand. Just because it's not what you expected or what you wanted, that's why when our expectations are just so disappointing sometimes, that we can just accept what is.
Yes.
That's there's purpose. There's a reason I'm here. There's a
Absolutely. And
reason
it's
we're everywhere at any given moment.
exactly, and you know, and I love it here. It's beautiful here. I'm in a house in the woods with a friend that I get along with really well.
Thank God.
There's there are bear and ravens and bobcats and all kinds of wildlife that, you know, to other people would go, oh, give me my house in the city. I'm like, no, let's go see the bears. You know, so
Right?
the
I'm
whole
from Ohio. We don't get to see
yeah,
bears,
he's like, let's go see the bears. So no, I'm having a, you know, it's for a place to be stranded. This is a great place for the universe to have flung me. This is perfect.
Well, or we can sit there in angst about being there and when am I getting out? When am I getting out? And meanwhile, you're missing out on all this amazing time that you could be doing, sucking
That's
up new experiences and information. So again, this whole thing with what's going on in our world has such great purpose. I mean, there is no one purpose to anything ever, whether it's your life or what's going on in the world. I mean, everybody's having a different experience. Everybody's learning something different. And as we awaken, we are responsible for helping facilitate this great shift into peace, you know? And how do you get peace? To remove chaos. And boy, I'm telling you, there's a lot of that going on right now.
there's a lot of that going on right now.
Woo! Yeah. Well, that's why they need badasses like us out there
That's
who
right.
really aren't going to listen to people's bullshit.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, Ray. So if you watch my interview with Becca, Raven is a lot like me. Like, I have no trouble defending another person. I have no trouble stepping into a conflict situation. I have tools of discernment, even though it looks like I'm just leaping into the fire. Um, and that's the thing that I love about you the most is that, yeah, you got to be a badass in this life, fake it till you make it.
Yep.
Buy a leather. Oh, so this is funny. So one time at a party, I told everybody, I said, I used to be a biker. I used to wear a lot of costumes. So I wore a biker costume, I wore a banker costume, and that was never really authentically who I was. So, one day I was having some kind of come to Jesus moment and I was pissed and sad and I'm crying on my porch and I'm sitting there. I put on my old leather jacket that my son wears, but I wore this thing like all over the world. Anyway, so I'm sitting in my leather jacket in my pajamas, smoking a cigarette going, I used to be a badass. Where'd she go? Right? And that jacket reminded me of who I part of who I was, even though I was faking it at the time. Boy, I'm certainly that now. But so I had a group of teachers that were at a group one night, and they actually bought a leather jacket that they kept in the break room. And when you were feeling especially unpowerful, you would go put the jacket on and eat your lunch. That's all. Hey, whatever works.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whatever makes you feel like a badass. And again, we have women's circle, and when we all get together and we do these things and these rituals, God, I miss doing rituals in a group. I mean, I do rituals by myself anyway, but
Yep.
it's so much more fun when you have that collective energy in that circle, you know? Well, Raven, thank you so much for tonight.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. And yeah, we'll get together.
I'd love that. All right, kids. Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight. And if you have any questions, I'm going to post all our information on here. I am doing a dream interpretation class on June 11th. And what I'd like to do, because Dana is a little more trained in some really cool stuff, where we can talk more about lucid dreaming or a dreams class 2 kind of thing. I would love to do that.
Yeah, that would be fun. I would love to do that too.
Yeah, because I lucid dream myself because of what I was taught. And I'm telling you, that takes it to a whole new level. Okay, kids, well, have a great night. Thanks for joining us, and keep the peace. And if you have any questions or you're feeling some kind of way, give us a call and set something up.
Yeah.
All right? All right. Thanks, Raven. Have a great night, honey. Bye, kids.
Bye.